Good morning. This is Marshall Davis. Christianity tends to focus on love. At least at its best it does. Historically, Christianity has too often focused on secondary issues like doctrine and tradition and rituals and rules and church structure, or at its worst, money and power. But the New Testament says God is love. And Jesus said that the spiritual life can be summed up in the two commands to love God and love one's neighbor. So love is at the heart of Christianity. Non-duality tends to focus on consciousness. It is sometimes summed up in the three Sanskrit words Sat-Chit-Ananda, often translated Being-Consciousness-Bliss. Now, I'm not saying love is absent. Love is present. For example, is the Buddhist teaching on compassion. But it seems that the nature of consciousness and reality and our identity are the main foci. That's the main focus. In Christian non-duality, I try to show that these two, love and consciousness, are connected and are in fact one, non-dual. Now, I've not always been consistent in these recordings and how I use the word consciousness and how it is related to what I call awareness or non-dual awareness. Often I've used the word consciousness to refer to human self-consciousness, the type of consciousness associated with the human psyche and the brain, and therefore affected by brain injury or disease or mental illness. This type of consciousness is the opposite of unconsciousness, and therefore it's one half of dualistic thinking, dualistic consciousness. Humans experience this duality of consciousness and unconsciousness on a regular basis. We experience it every night in deep sleep, or when we faint, or when we go under anesthesia. By consciousness, I'm usually referring to this one half of dualistic consciousness. For non-dual consciousness, I have usually used the word awareness and made a distinction between awareness and consciousness. By awareness, I mean that which does not disappear during times of unconsciousness. Does not disappear in deep sleep or under anesthesia or even physical death. This non-dual awareness is our true nature. Now, I could have chosen the word consciousness to refer to that like others do and avoided any confusion. Perhaps pure consciousness, or maybe consciousness with a capital C is the better way to talk about it. In any case, awareness is the word I have used for divine consciousness, also called non-dual awareness or unitive awareness. Pure consciousness or awareness is our true nature. It is present in all living things and in nascent form in inanimate matter. Awareness is expressed in the physical world, and at the same time, the physical world appears in awareness. There's no inside and outside in non-duality. There's only one. Now, to get back to love, this non-dual awareness or pure consciousness is love. When one sees as non-dual awareness, it expresses as love. When I look into the eyes of another person, I do not see a separate, different person. I see me. We are one. The consciousness, not the individual human consciousness, but the pure consciousness, is us. Now let me state this again very simply. When I look in the eyes of another person, I recognize the pure consciousness behind their eyes is the same consciousness that is looking from my eyes. Is only one consciousness, capital C. And you are that consciousness. No, you are obviously not that person, that persona, that individual human self-consciousness, but you are the consciousness, capital C, that is behind all personas, behind all persons. Personas are just different masks that consciousness wears, and it makes us think that we're different and separate. Mythologist Joseph Campbell called them the masks of God. The persona, or the ego, or the psyche sees itself as separate consciousness. That's what I have normally called consciousness, because that's what most people think of as their consciousness. That's formed by the brain. That is why each persona appears different, because they're each the product of different brains. But all personas are an expression of the same consciousness. The consciousness, pure consciousness that is behind my eyes is the same consciousness that is behind your eyes. We are literally one. Another way of saying this is that there is one self, with a capital S, expressed as all the small selves, the lowercase s. And these small selves are what we tend to mistake ourselves as being. When one wakes up to the reality of oneself, non-duality, one pure consciousness or awareness, the natural result is love. Jesus taught us to love our neighbor as ourselves. We can do that because our neighbor is quite literally our self. I am my neighbor. My neighbor is me. The immigrant standing at the border waiting to get in is you. Just look into their eyes and you will recognize yourself. It's unmistakable. In the parable of the sheep and the goats, Jesus mentions different types of groups of people. He mentions the naked, so poor they don't have any clothing, and the hungry, and the stranger. He meant the immigrant, and the prisoner. And they said, all those are him. They're Jesus. They are me. They are you. When we see that, there's love. Even the enemy is me. The one who stands against everything that I believe and say and do is me. I look into the eyes of the person who sees me as their enemy, and I see myself. He or she is me, just with a different name and face and genetic code and upbringing and environmental factors that produced a different psyche and a different outlook on the world. But it's still me. Literally me. That's why we can love our neighbors. When we see there's only one self, and we all are that one self, seemingly in all these different bodies and expressions, then we see that we cannot die. When this body and persona that goes by the name of Marshall Davis dies, I do not die. I continue to live. And not just genetically in my children and grandchildren and future descendants, and not just in loved ones' memories. I literally live in every other human being on the earth. And not only human beings. If the human race succeeds in destroying itself, as it seems bent on doing, I still do not die. I am in every creature. I am every creature. My wife and I are cat sitting this month. We are keeping somebody's cat for 1 month while they get their furnace fixed. You need a furnace up here in New Hampshire. And they also need to recover from some physical issues. So we're keeping the cat in our home for a month. And when I look at that cat sitting in the chair next to me or sitting on my lap or something like that, and look into the cat's eyes, I see the same pure consciousness peering out at me. The same consciousness that I am. We live in an old 18th century house, which means there are lots of cracks in the foundation for mice to creep in, especially in the oldest part of the house, right at the hearth there, the fireplace we have in that part of the house. A while ago, I was in the living room and I noticed a mouse in front of the sofa. I also recognized immediately it was a different type of mouse that I'm used to seeing in our house. It was a field mouse. It was kind of sitting up, and it was either sick or young or hurt or something. Anyway, it let me pick it up. I placed it outside, and as I carried it outside, I looked into its eyes, and I saw myself looking back. The pure consciousness in all beings is divine. This is what we call God. This is life. The prologue of John's Gospel says of Jesus that as eternal Logos, that he is life. And the life is the light of men, it says. That's what it means to be made in the image of God. An image is a reflection. We are the reflection of God. God looks at us and sees himself. Sees God's self, not himself. When God looks into human eyes, God sees God's self. When Jesus teaches us to love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, we are really loving ourselves. God loving us is actually God loving God's self in us. And when we love our neighbor, we are loving God in our neighbor. That's what Jesus meant in that parable when he says, as you have done to the least of these, my brothers and sisters, the hungry, the poor, the naked, and so forth, you have done to me. He's speaking literally there. He knew that he was them and they were him. And all are God, all one. And everyone intuitively knows this, I think. That is why we respond instinctively with compassion and love when others are in need. You know, there's an earthquake in Turkey and Syria and the other side of the world, and we respond with help because we are the Syrians and the Turks. A tornado hits a town. In our country, in the U.S. here, in the Midwest, we respond with compassion because they're us. That's what GoFundMe campaigns draw upon. You know, the other day, a friend shared a GoFundMe campaign for a man in the neighboring town who doesn't have much and needs to have all of his teeth removed and get dentures, but he doesn't have dental insurance and doesn't have the mind to do that. And there was a photograph of him with terrible looking teeth. Now, I don't know the guy, but I know what it's like to have dental problems. So I contributed because he is me. A lot of other people contributed. I think they're looking for $10,000 or something, and they got it. So you'll be getting new teeth soon. Love is rooted in awareness of unitive consciousness. At a deep level, we know we are everyone, and so we love. We know we are one with all creatures, so we respond by caring for creatures, all creatures. We know we are the environment itself, every living thing in the environment. So we respond by trying to protect it because we are protecting ourselves. We protect the earth because we are the earth. Even Genesis says we came from the earth. but people who are so caught up in their own personal identity or their ethnic identity or religious or national identity that they even can bring themselves to hate others and want to kill others. They have forgotten who and what they are. And those who are so self-centered that they ignore the needs of others and neglect our fellow creatures on this planet. They have spiritual amnesia. They're asleep to their true identity. That's why they do not love. The Apostle John said, "Those who do not love are not born of God, for God is love." When we wake up to who we really are, this love, then we love. Consciousness and love are one. And that is it for today. Grace and peace to you.